Now's the part of the show where I get to add to my wish list. We've been checking out new guns for 2017 here with the new edition from Walther Arms. And joining us is Kevin Wilkerson to talk about the Creed. But apparently we're having some technical difficulties. Now, until we can get those technical difficulties resolved, I haven't personally had a chance to actually get a hold of the Creed. Apparently it's been making its rounds on the YouTube gun review circuit. And however, I had done a review on the PPQ for, I want to say it was about 3 or 4 years ago, where I compared the PPQ to the Glock 19. And at the time, I remember being enamored by the PPQ simply because, one, the trigger was a lot smoother than the one on my Glock 19. The ergonomics were really good. I think those were kind of the genesis of what I call like the Batman grips that you got on the HKP30s. HKP30 Batman grips were a little bit more refined, but the ones on the PPQ were really good. It was one of the first guns that I ever was able to kind of witness a purposeful attempt at ergonomics on a firearm in terms of detailing the way a gun feels in your hand. I was so accustomed to dealing with Glocks where it was kind of like you make your body fit to how the gun reacts or whatever the ergonomic system was on a particular gun, which on the Glock was little to nothing. So with that being said, I recently also got my hands on the CCP, which was supposed to be the concealed carry version of a striker-fired pistol from Walther. The gun felt incredibly good in my hand, especially considering the fact that the gun was incredibly small, or smaller than what I was used to. And so from my standpoint, I haven't actually got around to reviewing it, but in the short period that I've had the gun, I can't say that I'm not the biggest fan of the trigger just because it's a double action trigger. Now, I know some people love that component of the gun simply because they see it as being a safety issue. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of us have to factor in whenever we start talking about the triggers on a particular gun. Because I personally like to have a really smooth, shorter version of a trigger. There are a lot of people out there, especially new shooters, who like longer trigger pulls because they feel that they're a little bit safer. And I think there's a bit of a stigma, ironically enough, in the gun world when it comes to using safety first to determine what guns they decide to own. So from that perspective, I'm not the biggest fan of the trigger personally on the CCP, but I can see somebody wanting that gun who's carrying it for the first time, or somebody who's deciding to carry a firearm for the first time using the CCP as a concealed carry based on the fact that the trigger was a little bit longer. And the trigger pull wasn't necessarily heavy, it was just longer. Now, with that being said, they've come out with the Creed. And from what I can gather, the Creed looks like a direct competitor to the Glock 19, except it's a hammer-fired gun and it costs a lot less. I think if I remember correctly, from my own personal research, I think the Creed was going for about $300 to $400. And I remember that there was a time period for me where buying a Glock was about in that range. We were looking at somewhere between $377, $399, and like $500. Now you're looking at about $550, $600 some odd dollars for about a Gen 4 Glock. I haven't had a chance to actually handle the Creed, but my initial reaction when I first saw it was more so that looks like a bigger version of the CCP with some updated features, which is not a bad thing because some of the great features of the CCP was the ergonomics on the grip were really good. The balance of the gun was really good. Everything about the gun was really good except for my kind of critique of the trigger. If you like that platform, I think for some people it's a little bit too foreign and they're so used and so accustomed to the Glock this and the Glock that for them it's going to be a little bit too different. But there are a lot of die-hard Walther PPQ, PPS, PPC fans out there who love the ergonomic design and just the overall platform of the PP series, so to speak. Now, I hopefully will be able to get my hands on this gun and review it at some point, even though I'm technically behind because I haven't reviewed the CCP. And I know a lot of people wanted me to do an update version of the PPQ, which I think is one of the probably most underrated striker-fired guns on the market. Now, I did say that the Creed that they're coming out with, or they've already come out with, is a hammer-fired gun, which is the only thing that differentiates it between the Glock 19. However, the hammer is a little bit different. If you were to actually just look at the gun from a profile standpoint, the hammer is actually recessed inside of the gun. And so you don't really actually notice it until you start pulling the trigger on the firearm. So that's where it kind of differs in that regard. But I know there are a lot of people out there who love hammer-fired guns. Me personally, I'm torn. The way I implement hammer-fired guns in my life is a little bit different. When I conceal carry, I always typically conceal carry striker-fire guns. I love a constant trigger. I've don't really care too much for having a different trigger pull between the first and the second shot. Is it a huge deal? Not really. Just depends who you talk to. Nonetheless, there are some people out there who prefer a hammer-fired gun. For them, they like the visual cue of the gun actually being in battery and so forth and so on. Now, with me, I typically keep all of my hammer-fired guns when I'm doing off-body carry. That being said, I think we've kind of fixed our technical issues, and I think, Kevin, you there?
Yeah, I'm here now.
All right, perfect. All right. So well, I was kind of just going into my thoughts of, one, the PPQ and the CCP. I kept calling it PPC. The CCP that I have from you guys. And I was saying basically that in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm getting a lot of resemblance of the CCP, but in a bigger platform with updated features in the Creed. Would that be correct?
To a point.
Don't hesitate to say no, because I'm wrong a lot.
No. The CCP has an exclusive soft coil system to it, which makes it easy to rack and that kind of stuff. The Creed in general is a hammer-fired weapon and is on a bigger platform. So there are some significant differences between the two.
Okay.
But it's still going to have the signature ergonomics that a Walther has that we stand behind. And it's still going to have a really great trigger, which is our two biggest points in which we try to put on every gun. So you're right about those two. Yeah,
no, I was just saying that with respect to especially the PPQ, I remember when I did my video comparison between that and the Glock 19, that was one of the biggest differences I noticed was how smooth the trigger was on a PPQ compared to my Glock. So absolutely, yeah. So if that trigger made it onto this gun, you guys are on the right road. So who's the customer for a gun like this?
Well, so we've got a really interesting weapon here in the Creed, and what we're trying to do is, what we believe is the coolest part is that we've got a really good entry price point for Walther and the Creed, and we've been able to bring out a gun that has the signature ergonomics, the great trigger, what you're talking about, in a gun that's sub $400.
Gotcha.
So that's really what we're looking for. We want to bring people into the Walther family that get an idea for what it feels like to shoot a Walther, to hold a Walther, to carry a Walther, and to be able to do it maybe with multiple guns in their own personal arsenal, to say the least.
Gotcha. So for me, like, I'm looking at this Creed now, and you tell me it's you said a sub 3 or sub 4 gun? Sub $400?
Oh yeah, it's a $399 MSRP.
$399
so
MSRP.
See on the street for under $400.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm looking at the gun, and to be honest with you, a lot of guns in that price point they look horrible. And,
sure.
And
we call them dump trucks.
Yeah.
So we tried to make this not look like a dump truck.
And I think you accomplished that, because in many ways, if you would have put those guns side by side, I couldn't tell you price point wise what the differences were. Like if you would have the PPQ, the CCP, the PPS, and the Creed sitting side by side, I'd be amiss to say which one was which from a price point standpoint. So I think you guys killed it in that regard.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and it's got kind of some of the stuff that you're talking about that we would highlight is the front and rear slide serrations. That's one of the things that highlights Walther guns, and we put those into this gun. Obviously, got a Picatinny rail, the full size grip, and it's got a ambidextrous magazine release. So
Gotcha.
You got some really cool stuff in that. And then also another big thing on this is that it comes with 2 magazines.
Oh, okay.
Which oftentimes guns under $400 do not come with 2. And right in the package, you're going to have 2 metal mags.
So what type of like magical, magicianal, like, voodoo stuff that you do to be able to put the gun at that price point and still provide 2 magazines?
Well, some of the stuff, to not get into too much detail, is kind of how we're manufacturing this weapon.
Okay.
I won't get into too many details on it.
I'll just say it's the Illuminati.
But yeah, we've been able to manufacture it quicker, take less time on the CNCs, and be able to make more of them at a better price.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. So are these guns available now or
yeah, they're available now.
Okay.
And to take it a step further, we're about to get a bigger shipment in that will be going to distributors within the next couple weeks, hopefully before the holiday season gets real crazy. So should be able to see them, yeah.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the magazine release, because I know a lot of times the European-style magazine release is a point of conjecture for a lot of us here in America.
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny how I'm talking to you as if you're not in America as well.
No, we're American. We're unfortunate.
Exactly. And so you guys decided to go with the push-button magazine release on the Creed. And I know you guys have some guns that have more of the European-style magazine release. Me personally, I don't care. My brain doesn't really kind of malfunction depending on which one I have. I can use them readily. So
sure.
Is that a design language that's going to continue? And you guys, as you guys keep putting out more new product, are you going to stick with the more push-button magazine release versus the European style?
Yeah, you'll probably see us in the USA, Walther, pushing more of that push button.
Okay.
The powder release is awesome.
Yeah.
And a lot of people love it. And we love that people love it. But most of the American style is a push button. Yeah. That's what most people are going to be gravitating to because it's the most normal for here. And as you've seen Walther kind of obviously be in Fort Smith and be in the United States, we're making weapons for, the American market, and the push button's right where it's at.
Okay. And we got a few seconds left before we have to go. But one quick question: is there a particular reason why you guys went hammer instead of striker?
Oh, it kind of goes back to that price point like you're talking about.
Bingo, gotcha.
Some things that we had done in the hammer fired is what makes it cool. And just, you said you have a couple seconds, but I will touch. It is what we call a pre-cocked double action trigger.
Okay.
And to say that very quickly means that the slide is actually pre-cocking as it's moving. It's actually pre-cocking the spring inside. So you're going to get a feel very similar to a single action pistol at under $400. So
awesome.
We just urge people to get in their hands and take a shot with it.
Sounds good to me, man. Well, thank you very much. We wish we had more time. We had some technical issues, but but I'm pretty sure you'll be back. You are in America.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys having us.
Absolutely, man. Thanks a lot, Kevin.
Thank you.
All right. And that's it for Seeing Live. Thank you for joining us, and be sure to come back and watch us again Monday.